I hold in my hand the viewership numbers for the College Football Playoff National Championship game Monday night, which is disaster number one. Monday night, Ohio State Notre Dame averaged 22.1 million viewers. That's a huge number. It's a really big number. That's more people than watch this show. That's a huge number. But in the grand scheme of things, is it really the figure that everyone wanted? Probably not. If I had to guess at the reaction inside the walls of ESPN, they probably looked at this number and went, okay, it's not a disaster. It could be better. There's a lot of context that needs to be added. There's also a lot of understanding of, how viewership numbers work these days versus how they worked in 2004, 1994, 1974. I mean, an episode of MASH in the 70s is going to do twice what the college football playoff numbers are going to be these days. Number one, because there's a lot more on TV. And number two, because there was one or two or three or four places to go for entertainment back then, and you were either watching that or you weren't watching anything. And also these days, there are far more places to watch a game than just traditional over-the-air. Not to mention, this game was not on ABC, and I think it will be in coming years. So I know some of you take it for granted that just everyone's got ESPN. Everyone doesn't have ESPN. Now, that's more by choice than by availability these days. So 22.1, all things considered, probably a below-average number relative to what should be expected for a national championship game in 2025 between two big brand names. Now, Ohio State and Notre Dame played. So the one thing that I want to say is, let's talk about the reasons here. Everyone's got their take. I do as well. So there are a few things in play. Firstly, the game was played way too late. The game's played January 20th. January 20th should be a couple of weeks after the college football season ends. And instead, we're playing a national championship game on a Monday night, no less. Monday's always been a dumb night for college football to play its national championship game. I've got an answer for it. We've talked about it before on the show. I'll get to it in a second. But you got it on Monday night, January 20th. The inauguration earlier that day, I think, had a little something to do with the dwindled number. Probably overstated, but I think that was part of the case. I think partly the case is you're playing it on the back end of a holiday weekend, so there's travel concern. Yes, but I would also say that you got to understand these are two of the biggest brands in college football. So for everyone who wants to say, oh, there were some factors that probably whittled away at the viewership, I would counter and say you probably had a lot of sidewalk people who normally would not have watched the game that did because it was Ohio State versus Notre Dame. So, don't just assume that that 22.1 is reflective of a lot of factors that normally wouldn't be in play. You won't always have Notre Dame versus Ohio State to boost a lot of that viewership as well. So I think that offsets in some cases. But let's also remember, and this is kind of a thought that I've had for a while now, I don't think we're ever going to, I'm not mad about this, okay? I talked about this the other night. ESPN has exclusivity of the college football playoff. That means it airs nowhere else unless they sublicense it, which they did a couple of times to TNT. They will not air college football playoff games anywhere other than ESPN or where ESPN allows it to be aired. Now, I'm not mad at ESPN about that. ESPN did no different than any of us would do if we owned a network and we could go and acquire the exclusive rights of a property as valuable as the college football playoff. We'd do it. So this is not a shot at ESPN. We're never going to maximize the societal awareness of this product. In this case, the product is the playoff and the national championship game, if one network has exclusive ownership of that property. And the reason is because the later you get in the year, the less and less and less every other network and every other broadcast entity at the party has to promote your product. Why would Fox promote the college football playoff? They don't own any of it. Why would CBS? Why would NBC? Why would Amazon? Why would Netflix? That is not the way the NFL does it. Now, I am not one to ever compare our sport to the NFL because one is uniquely beautiful and separate from the other one. But in this case, the way they've structured the NFL playoff is really beautiful because everyone has a cut of the action. Therefore, everyone is incentivized to promote the action. And I will tell you what I heard from several of you. And that was, yeah, I'm going to watch the game, but the buzz kind of feels off. Like it doesn't feel like everyone's kind of aware that there's a national championship tonight. Part of that's because the thing's played way too late on the calendar. Part of it was a holiday weekend. You had the inauguration. So, yeah, there were some distractions, but no one gets distracted from when the Super Bowl's happening. No one gets distracted from when the NFC and AFC championship games are happening. It's because they're happening all over the place. You can't go anywhere without having the NFL product, an NFL playoff product promoted in your face. You can with college football. You know, unless you're regularly consuming ESPN's content, which I do, so I'm not the example here. But if you're not regularly consuming it, it could kind of sneak up on you. I mean, there were a lot of folks, I guarantee you, whose teams were out of it, or who may be more casual college football fans who said, oh, the national championship games tonight? Well, it should never be the case. There's no excuse for that to ever be the case. But I don't know how that changes. Because I'll also tell you this, if you think ESPN as a collective is looking at this, if you think Disney as a collective is looking at this number and saying, oh, that's terrible, you need to understand they have added inventory they didn't have in the past. In the past, you had 2 playoff games in the national championship game, and that's it. Well, I'm looking at this piece of paper here that's telling me ABC and ESPN had the 10 most viewed games of the season. 9 of those were playoff games. The other one was the SEC championship game. So they've got more inventory. So if you would have gotten 30 million viewers in a previous life on your title game, and you got 22 million on this one, guess what else you got? You got 16 million on this playoff game. You got 13.5 on that one. You got 17 million here, 20 million there. I mean, in the aggregate, they're getting way more eyeballs. They paid a whole lot more for it. So dollars and cents wise, we'll see if it plays out for them the way they wanted it to. But I just wish and wish and wish that in the coming years, however this thing evolves, I wish we could get more players at the table. It wouldn't be for the betterment of ESPN. It wouldn't be for the betterment of any one entity in specified terms. It would be for the greater good of college football. College football, the college football playoff, would be better served to have more networks at the table there. I'll always believe that. The NFL is going to need to help this thing out, man. This is a big sticking point for me. I have long believed the NFL benefits greatly from college football, and they do nothing in return. The NFL benefits greatly from the marketing, development, and promotion of players before they ever get to Sunday. The NFL has an assembly line. Don't have a minor league, mind you, that they have to bankroll. They have an assembly line called college football that works for years to promote players and raise awareness of who a player is and develop the player on the field to where they get to the NFL by draft time. A lot of people know their names. The NFL hasn't spent a dime to promote them. They've been developed to the degree that you're ready to draft them in the first round, and in some cases put them on your field immediately. You didn't pay a dime to develop them. And college football did that. And in return, the NFL says, okay, we're still going to elbow you out of the way to where you feel pressured to play your championship game on a Monday night in January. So the NFL doesn't have to do anything. The NFL doesn't have to acquiesce because the NFL is the king. I would hope, for once in someone's life in the room, I would hope the NFL would look and say, maybe it's in our best interest for college football to thrive. Now, the NFL doesn't need anything right now. They're not hurting for anything. But for the greater good of the brand, for the greater good of football in America, it's a good thing for college football to thrive. And this doesn't take a whole lot. What it takes is, I've seen some proposals that we should always play the national championship on New Year's Day. I'd have no problem with that. I'd love that. But if we couldn't do that, let's say a solid Plan B emerges. Plan B is not too difficult. Plan B looks like this. The last week of the NFL regular season, week 18 right now, is taking place the first week in January. If you could position your college football playoff national championship game to be on that Saturday, all you'd need is the NFL to come to an understanding with you that instead of taking that prime time spot, they take the early window, they take the mid-afternoon window, and they leave that prime time window for college football to play its national championship game on Saturday, which is the day the Lord intended for college football to play its national championship game. And that alone, if they just did that, would be more than enough of a return, of a simple reaching across the aisle, a non-physical handshake of sorts from the NFL to college football as a modicum, finally, of thanks for the mountains of work that college football does for the NFL? I don't know. That may be a little John Lennon-ish, but I could imagine a world where that would happen. Also, there was no SEC in the national championship game. That made a lot of you happy. I don't know that it did great things for viewership. A lot of people rage view SEC games. Like rage, as in they want to see the SEC brand burn to the ground, but they're watching. And I'm not saying Notre Dame or Ohio State doesn't draw a viewer. They do. But I think there's a subset of society out there that had already checked out because they don't really hate Ohio State or Notre Dame. It wouldn't matter if you put Arkansas or Alabama in the thing. If there's an SEC sticker in there, you're going to get some rage viewership on the periphery that I don't think you got here. Not to mention there's some big brands in the SEC that could draw in their own right, but it wasn't the brands. Like, we weren't missing big brands here. I think you were missing some rage viewership. Like, outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan, I'm not sure that there was a whole lot of rage viewing going on in this national championship. So those are just some thoughts. Remember this, though. Remember, I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to see this thing out. This was version 1 for me. It was version 1 for you. It was version 1 for the college football playoff. It was version 1 for ESPN. I think they learned a lot from this. I can't imagine the copious amounts of notes that the powers that be on all sides of that table there took going through version 1. We've heard some early indications that maybe there have been talks between the college football playoff and Roger Goodell at the NFL to maybe, work together in the future on scheduling. We've heard Rich Clark as recently as last week talk about the scheduling from the college football playoff side of things, acknowledging that, yeah, we love home playoff games. Maybe we need to look into more of those. Point being, they can't call an audible as the thing's going on. We can complain during the tournament. They can't change the tournament until the next version of the tournament. And I'm kind of on the side that not a ton of adjustments are going to come this year, this upcoming season, but the 2026 and beyond product could look radically different. In fact, I'd be surprised if you didn't see some fairly major changes. 2026 season and beyond, because if you look at some of this thing out into the future, Jesse, what did we look at today? There are some years, like 2 years from now, I think, the championship game would be played January 25th. That's insane. You cannot let that happen. Like, don't let that happen. Please, someone, step up for the greater good of common sense in college football. Believe it or not, those things can overlap. And say enough is enough. You don't, there is this other concept everyone wondered if it would ever happen, burnout. Too much college football going on for too long. There was a crowd that would tell you that's impossible. You could just play college football year-round. Everyone would just keep watching year-round, ignoring the basic laws of scarcity, that more is not always better. More of something that's valuable makes that thing less valuable. Believe it or not, basic laws of economics also apply to college football. There is such a thing as audience burnout, and I think we rubbed right up on it this past year, maybe even went over the line a step or two. That's okay. Just step back. That's all you have to do. You have to step back. It's as simple as popping the top on a can of cream soda, zero sugar Zevia. Zero sugar Zevia, kind of redundant because all Zevia is zero sugar. But that is my observation. That's how I see the college football playoff viewership crisis. That's not really a crisis. It's just a data point. It's just a bit of feedback.